What's going on, guys? Welcome to this video in which we're going to talk about a concept that's not talked about at all in the e-commerce space, right? And for good reasons too, because a lot of e-commerce agency, right, will hide behind certain metrics just to kind of cover their butt, so to speak, right? Because if you're an e-commerce brand owner and you outsource your marketing to an agency, and typically at the end of the month on a bi-weekly basis, however these agencies report to you, a lot of the metrics, or the North Star metric that they will track profit upon is the return on ad spend, right? Now, if you're a savvy business owner and you've been in business for a number of time, you understand that that metric doesn't mean a whole lot by itself, right? Because it doesn't necessarily contribute to money in your bank account, right? And the reason why I'm talking about this is because myself that do own an e-commerce brand, Sloop Personal Apparel Company, I've mistakenly, for years and years, when doing our own marketing, we looked at ROAS as, okay, cool, our ROAS is pretty good. I mean, we should be making profit, but that was never the case when we looked at our bank accounts, right? And additionally, as I work with agencies, ad agencies, and this was common a problem with with talking with business owners, right? They always talk about ROAS, but then eventually when ROAS is really good, but then the business is not necessarily in the best place because that ROAS is not necessarily leading to money in the bank account. And in the agency world, I saw this was a big reason as to why businesses will churn, meaning like they will, end a contract with the agency because even though ROAS is good, it doesn't necessarily mean that the business is in a good position, right? All that to say that I want to introduce a newer concept, again, that is not talked about much in e-commerce, right? And essentially with this concept, what is called as the profitable e-commerce success pyramid, right? And let's jump into my screen and then let's look at what that is and what that entails, right? And at the end of this video, essentially the whole concept, what I want you to gain is the metrics, right, that you should be looking and tracking on a consistent basis, as these metrics represent what position your business is at really any time of the month, right, or on a monthly basis, right? And so again, we're gonna dive deep into in this specific metrics, all right? So as you guys can see on my screen over here, so as I said, we call this the profitable e-commerce success pyramid, right? And we'll look at these individual metrics, right? They have an order of hierarchy, right? So we have on the bottom over here, which is essentially what a lot of agencies will report to you as the channel specific, we refer to as channel specific metrics, because that's what they are. When you look at different platforms such as like Meta or Google, for example, this is where you pull those specific metrics, right? That includes the return on ad spend, that also includes the CPM, CPC, or CPA. CPM is really attributed to paid social platforms, right? And essentially how those platforms charge you. And then you have the CPC model from essentially Google Ads. That's how Google charges you based upon the cost per click model, right? And so we're gonna look at each of these individual metrics. And again, the whole goal of this is just for you to, after understanding this, go look at your business and start tracking all this individual metric, and then that will really give you a guidance as to where your business is from a profitability standpoint, right? And towards the end of the video, we'll also look at a mock P&L. We'll see how these metrics contribute directly to the bottom line and how much it essentially contributes to the bottom line of the P&L, and how they play a role in your overall profit and loss statement. All right, so looking at this pyramid over here, as I mentioned, they go in order of hierarchy, right? So on the bottom, as I mentioned, you have your channel metrics, right? Which is what we have over here, right? Channel specific metrics. As I said, that includes your return on ad spend, your CPM, cost per click, and CPA. And then above that, we have what we call the customer metrics, right? So as you understand in business, customers is the lifeblood, or new customers is the lifeblood of our business, right? And I mean, obviously there's contingency upon what business model you're running, but new customers is always going to be a very important aspect of our business, right? So new customer acquisition cost, what's the cost of acquiring those customers? AMER, which is acquisition marketing efficiency ratio, and essentially the repeat purchase rate of those customers, right? And so this is what we refer to as customers metric, right? And then we're also going to dive into the calculation of that in this video. And then above that, you have order revenue. So this is more looking at the business metrics, as you see over here, right? And so that would include order revenue, ad spend, MER, which is marketing efficiency ratio, and average order value, AOV, right? And then finally at the top, right, one of the most important, not the, but one of the most important metric to look at is your contribution margin, right? let's talk a little bit about that. So what is your contribution margin? Contribution margin, essentially how you calculate contribution margin is your net sale minus cost of delivery. Within your cost of delivery, that includes your cost of goods sold, that includes your shipping and fulfillment, right? That includes any credit card fees associated with the specific platforms that you're working with. And that also includes your cost of delivery, right? And any other cost associated with getting that product to the customer would also be included within what we call cost of delivery, right? And then you subtract your ad spend, and that's how you come up with your contribution margin. This can be calculated on a business level or on a specific product level, right? Essentially, a lot of e-commerce brands will look at this on a product basis just to kind of see how profitable is each product that they carry, right? After subtracting the cost of goods sold and all the costs associated with getting that product to the customer and how much we're paying on marketing costs or acquisition costs, how profitable are we in that specific product? And a lot of businesses will make this decision and, okay, we need to discontinue this product line because we're not very profitable with this, right? And then they only focus on products that are specifically profitable in, meaning they're making a positive contribution margin each time they sell that product. Right, so it's a very important, very important metric to really pay attention to, right? Amongst all these other metrics, right? So that's your contribution margin. And so this typically sits right above your operational. When you're looking at your P&L, this sits right above your OPEX, right? So essentially this is profit that is left over to cover your operational costs, because your operational cost is gonna be fixed, right? And everything else above that is, it's gonna be a variable, right? I hope you guys are tracking with me so far. So let's look at each individual metric specifically, right? So as you mentioned, that your return on ad spend, right? It doesn't contribute to money in your bank account. It absolutely doesn't. It just tells you how well your channel marketing strategy is performing, or your channel marketing is essentially performing, right? So you can look at some of the campaigns that you're running. Okay, cool, this specific campaign has a 3x ROAS or 4x ROAS. I think this is pretty good, right? And you can look at other marketing campaigns and turn them off because they don't have a high enough return on ad spend, right? And then at the end of the day, or when you look at this on a monthly basis, when you look at your return on ad spend, okay, cool, this is decent. At least we're breaking even on the platform itself, or we're making some type of profit, like a 3x or a 4x, right? Again, this doesn't necessarily mean this is how much money that is going to be in your bank account, right? It doesn't, right? And so that's what return on ad spend is. And then obviously you have your CPM, right? So CPM is essentially how these paid social channels charge you, right? It's cost per impression, cost per 1,000 impression, right? I mean, over time, these platforms are charging you more and more to advertise. Specifically, the CPM becomes more and more expensive, right? So these days, we're seeing, depending on the category that you're in, on the industry that you're in, we're seeing CPM of like $30, $50 plus. Right? Again, it just all depends on the audiences that you're targeting. They get really expensive, right? And when it's really expensive, it just makes it more imperative, right, that your overall marketing strategy is profitable, right? Your conversion rate is, you have a very high conversion rate, so you're able to convert a lot of these customers that you're sending over to your website, right? And then you have your cost per click, right? This is specifically platforms such as Google will use a cost per click basis to charge you, right? So that means you're getting charged on each click. And again, it's getting more and more expensive as time elapses, right? It's getting more and more expensive. And so again, it makes it more imperative that looking at these, you're as successful as you can when looking at your conversion rate, right? And above that, you also have what we call the customer metrics. So you have your new customers, right? On a monthly basis, how many new customers are you generating? And then you have the new customer acquisition cost, right? What is the cost of acquiring those new customers, right? And then you also have your AMER, which is the acquisition marketing efficiency ratio, right? And then after that, you have the repeat purchase rate, right? Now, to calculate the new customer acquisition cost, right? This is going to be when you're looking at your Shopify, right? This is going to be first-time orders. So you look at all the new customer that made an order for the first time essentially, and then you also divide that by the new customer ad spend, right? And then above this pyramid, we have what we call the business metric, right? So this is order revenue, which is calculated different company and different businesses will calculate this differently, but this is how we calculate it, and I think this is how it should be calculated. So you have your order revenue, which is gross sales, right, minus discounts, but before returns, right? So let me say that again. So this is gross sales minus discounts before you calculate any of the returns from customers, right? So this is order revenue, right? And then in terms of like marketing efficiency ratio, right? Because the next one on that is, actually we have ad spend, essentially how much you're spending on these platforms. And then you have marketing efficiency ratio. Marketing efficiency ratio is essentially the profitability or how efficient your overall marketing. So this takes into account all the channels that you're using for marketing. If you're marketing on Meta, TikTok, Google, or even Snapchat, you have to, when computing this, you have to include all of that spend. Right? And then you look at the total revenue, and that's what you divide it by to come up with the MER, right? So it's order revenue divided by ad spend, MER. Order revenue divided by ad spend. How much revenue are we making? And then how much are we spending? Divide that by this, how much we're spending, right? And then finally, you have your average order value, right? Average order value, which is essentially how you would calculate that, is your gross product revenue, right? Divided by the total transaction. The total number of people that purchase products, right? And then finally, as I mentioned earlier, we have your contribution margin, right? And this is by level of, or this is in this hierarchy, this is the most important one that you should be looking at. Again, as I said before, you can calculate this, or you can look at this from a product basis, or you can look at this just from a business basis, right? And to calculate that, as I mentioned before, this is your net sale, right? And you know how we calculate, this is your net sale minus cost of delivery. As I mentioned before, in that cost of delivery, this includes your cost of goods sold, your credit card and merchant processing fee. This includes how much you're spending, essentially your delivery costs, right? This is gonna be contingent upon upon the different products that you carry, right? And then minus your ad spend. That's what you come to as your contribution margin, right? And again, it's very important that you're keeping track of all these different metrics, or if you're just looking at one metric, you're going to be easily misled. You're going to be thinking, oh, your company is in a good position when your company is in a good position, but while in reality, you're not. And quite frankly, the truth of the matter is, I know a lot of businesses don't necessarily keep track of their P&L, right? And as I mentioned, we're going to look at a marked P&L, just kind of show you what that looks like and how these metrics play a role into the P&L. Okay, cool. All right, so let's look at a mock P&L over here, right? So we're gonna look at two separate ones, okay? So in this specific one, for this specific business, right, this is gonna be right here, right? So this covers essentially like a three-quarter accounting basis in which we have the revenue over here, right? And then we have costs, which is, as I mentioned before, like the cost of goods sold, shipping, and any cost of goods sold, shipping, and other costs associated with the product, right? And then we also have our expenses, or essentially your OPEX, right? So these are your fixed costs, right? So this would include essentially salaries of employees that you have and benefits as well. And essentially, in addition to that, you also have how much you're paying if you're outsourcing your marketing, how much you're paying to the agencies, and if you have a building that you're paying for, any like office supplies, that will also be included over here, right? And then below that, we have EBITDA, right? Now let's look at another P&L, right? Which is this one over here. Now this is more of an account P&L, and this does not contribute. This does not have like your essentially like your business overhead, which we just looked at over here. It doesn't include any of your OPEX, as we just saw over here, right? So this mainly includes, obviously, you have your revenue from your top line revenue, and then account performance. This is like your marketing metrics, right? This has your CPA, this has your ROAS, and then this has your essentially like profit after ad spend, and then your variable business costs, right? And then on the bottom line, which would include profit after ad spend plus variable costs, which leads to, again, your contribution margin, as we talked about on the previous slide over here, contribution margin, which is this over here, right? So essentially, that's where that would sit on your P&L. It's right over here, right above what would be right above what would be your OPEX. So essentially this whole section over here, this whole line of the P&L, because these are two separate businesses essentially, because when we look at the top line revenue from this business, it's at 1.5 million. And then when we look at the revenue, the top line revenue from this specific business is $190,000, right? But so it wouldn't make sense for me just to copy and paste that here. But nonetheless, as I mentioned, the OpEx would sit right below this, right? That would be on this line item over there. And then that would essentially give you like the profit of the business or the month, the profit of the business, right? This is essentially what you will look in your bank account and essentially see, right? Whether that's a positive or whether that's a negative, your P&L will look on a monthly basis will tell you that, right? But again, from the contribution margin aspect of things, right? If you're outsourcing your marketing to an agency, they have a lot of control with what this contribution margin is, right? From your overall, how efficient your marketing is, right? How profitable is each dollar that's being dispensed to all these different platforms. What is the rate of those ad dollars coming back to your business in terms of profit, right? And so we're gonna talk about additional things such as like, how do you, from the marketing perspective, how do you affect these different metrics, right? Because when you look at some of these performance metrics, so it's just like your ad spend, as I mentioned before, like your CPM, impressions, CTR, clicks, CPC, and a host of other metrics, right? There's different ways there's different things and mechanisms and levels that you can pull to essentially affect this. While that's not the topic of this video, which we're going to talk about this in a preceding video, but just want to let you know, you have a whole lot of control in terms of what this number is, right? So you could, if you're spending, you could look at like, okay, cool, my CPM is really high right now, it's $15. How can I decrease that? If you have a $50 CPM, how can you decrease that, right? The lower your CPM is, in this case, it's like, okay, cool, we're able to reach more people, right? And so if you're able to reach more people and you have a relatively good conversion rate, then you're gonna be converting more people and making more revenue, right? Again, this topic of the performance metric is not the focus of this video, but I just kind of wanted to include that, like, hey, this is something you start thinking about, and I'm going to talk about this in a preceding video. Okay, guys, again, this chart, this pyramid of success, profitable e-commerce success pyramid, it's very, 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 very important. And this is also something that you can find on our website at lionmediaad.com, lionmediaad.com. You can get access to the P&L, this what we call a profit calculator, which would include the P&Ls that I just showed you, and amongst other things that you should be tracking in your business too as well, right? But again, the main focus of this video was really to talk about the profitable e-commerce success pyramid, right? We talk about the different hierarchy of these metrics and how to play a role into the business. If you found this successful and you want to see more videos like this, subscribe to the channel and like this video, and I'd be more than happy to post more related content like this just to overall help you in your business, in your e-commerce business, essentially just to help you thrive and succeed. All right, guys, I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Peace.